Commander Zixathera stood on the bridge of the stellar wind, her 6 eyes focused on the display screens that showed nothing but empty space. The Velthari commander had served the Galactic Coalition for 30 years, and she had never seen readings like these before. The gravitational sensors were going crazy, showing massive distortions in space that made no sense. "Commander, the anomalies are getting stronger," reported her science officer, a young Chitauri named Kexdal. His insect-like features showed worry as he tapped his control panel with his 4 arms. "Whatever is causing this is huge. Really huge." Zixathera moved closer to the main display. Her ship, the Stellar Wind, was 800 meters long and considered one of the largest vessels in the Coalition fleet. Most alien ships were much smaller, built for speed and efficiency rather than size. The Coalition had learned long ago that bigger ships were harder to maintain and cost too much to build. "Any idea what could cause gravitational distortions this large?" she asked. Kexdal shook his head. "The computer says it would take something the size of a small moon to create readings like this. But there are no moons or planets in this sector." The bridge crew was getting nervous. The Velthari, Chitauri, and other Coalition species had explored space for thousands of years. They had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. The distortions were moving in formation like a fleet of ships, but no ships could be that massive. "Commander," called out the communications officer, a blue-skinned Aquari, "we're getting signals from the distortion field. They're artificial. Someone is trying to communicate with us." Zixathera felt her hearts beating faster. First contact with a new species was always dangerous. The Coalition had rules about how to handle these situations, but the rules were written for normal encounters. Nothing about this felt normal. "Put it on the main screen," she ordered. The display flickered and then showed something that made the entire bridge crew go silent. Space itself seemed to be tearing open, creating tunnels of light and energy. From these tunnels came shapes that grew larger and larger as they approached. "By the ancient gods," whispered Kexdal. "Those are ships, but they were not like any ships the Coalition had ever seen." The first vessel to fully emerge from the tunnel was sleek and white, with strange writing on its hull. The sensors began calculating its size, and the numbers made no sense. 5,000 meters, read Kexdal, his voice shaking. "Commander, that ship is 5,000 meters long." Zixathera stared at the screen. Their own ship was 800 meters, and it was considered large. This alien vessel was more than 6 times bigger. But that was just the beginning. More ships came through the tunnels. Each one was massive, dwarfing anything in Coalition space. The sensors kept climbing. 7,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 12,000 meters. The bridge crew watched in silence as ship after ship emerged, each one bigger than the last. 15,000 meters, Kexdal reported, his voice barely a whisper. "That's impossible," said the weapons officer, a red-scaled Draknari. "No species builds ships that big. The materials alone would cost more than most planets produce in a century." But the sensors did not lie, and still more ships were coming. Then came the largest vessel. It moved slowly through the tunnel, taking several minutes to fully emerge. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the sensors calculated its size. The numbers climbed higher and higher, past anything they thought possible. 32,000 meters, Kexdal finally announced. "Commander, that ship is 32,000 meters long. It's like a flying city." Zixathera had to sit down. In all her years of service, through battles with pirates and first contacts with hostile species, she had never felt fear like this. The alien fleet before them represented power beyond anything the Coalition could imagine. "How many ships are there?" she asked. "Still counting, Commander. At least 50 major vessels plus hundreds of smaller escort ships. But even their escort ships are larger than our biggest battleships." The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming message. The aliens wanted to talk. Zixathera took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing hearts. "Put them through," she ordered. The main screen showed a new image. It was a human face, though the Coalition did not know that yet. The alien looked similar to several Coalition species with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. But there was something in those eyes that made Zixathera uncomfortable. Confidence. These beings were not afraid. "Greetings," said the human in perfect Coalition standard language. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems. We come in peace and friendship. We detected your monitoring station and wanted to introduce ourselves to your Galactic Coalition." The fact that they already knew about the Coalition was another shock. How long had they been watching? "This is Commander Zix Thera of the Coalition vessel Stellar Wind," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We welcome you to Coalition space. Your fleet is quite impressive." The human smiled. "Thank you. We apologize if our arrival caused any alarm. We know our ships are somewhat larger than what you might be used to. We can explain everything if you're willing to meet face to face." "Somewhat larger?" Zix Thera almost laughed at the understatement. These ships were not somewhat larger. They were impossibly, ridiculously, frighteningly massive. "We would be honored to meet with you," Zix Thera said. "Perhaps you could send a small delegation to our ship." The human's smile grew wider. "We appreciate the invitation, but we were hoping you might visit us instead. We have more room for proper diplomatic discussions. We can send a shuttle to pick you up." Before Zix Thera could answer, her sensors detected a new contact. A small ship was approaching from the human fleet. But as it got closer, she realized it was not small at all. The shuttle was 300 meters long, almost half the size of the Stellar Wind. "Commander," whispered Kextall, "their shuttle is bigger than most of our warships." Zix Thera realized that everything she thought she knew about space travel and ship design was wrong. These humans had not just built bigger ships. They had built them on a scale that seemed to ignore all the normal rules of physics and economics. As the massive shuttle approached, Zix Thera made her decision. She had to see these ships up close. She had to understand how these humans had achieved something that every coalition engineer said was impossible. "Prepare a diplomatic team," she ordered. "We're going aboard the human ship." "Which one?" asked her first officer. Zix Thera looked at the display, showing dozens of vessels that were each larger than anything in Coalition space. "The big one," she said. As the shuttle docked with the Stellar Wind, Zix Thera realized that first contact with humanity was going to change everything. The Coalition thought they were the advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy, but these humans had just proven that there were levels of advancement the Coalition had never even dreamed of. The age of small ships and careful resource management was over. The humans had arrived, and they had brought their cities with them. Commander Zix Thera felt small as the human shuttle approached the massive ship called Leviathan. Through the shuttle's windows, she could see the human vessel growing larger and larger until it filled their entire view. The shuttle pilot, a friendly human named Lieutenant Torres, seemed completely comfortable navigating around the giant ship. "First time seeing one of our city ships?" Torres asked with a smile. "City ship?" repeated Zix Thera. Her translator was working, but the concept made no sense. "That's what we call them," Torres explained. "The Leviathan houses about 200,000 people. It's like a flying city that can travel between stars." 200,000 people? Zix Thera's entire homeworld had only 50 million inhabitants. The idea of putting 200,000 people on a single ship was beyond her understanding. The shuttle entered a massive opening in the side of the Leviathan. Zix Thera expected to see a normal docking bay, but what she saw instead made her gasp. The hangar was enormous, stretching out farther than she could see. Dozens of shuttles and smaller ships were parked in neat rows, and human workers moved around like tiny ants. "This is Hangar Bay 7, Torres said casually. One of the smaller ones. Zix Thera looked around as they landed. The hangar bay was larger than her entire ship. If this was a small hangar, what did the large ones look like? Dr. Sarah Chen was waiting for them as they left the shuttle. She was tall for a human, with dark hair and kind eyes. Behind her stood several other humans, all wearing simple blue uniforms. "Welcome aboard the Leviathan," Dr. Chen said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I hope your journey was comfortable. Your ship is impressive," Zix Thera managed to say. Dr. Chen smiled. "Thank you. We know it's probably bigger than what you're used to. Would you like a tour? I think it might help explain why we build on this scale." As they walked through the ship, Zix Thera's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The corridors were wide enough for ground vehicles to drive through. The ceilings were so high that they seemed to disappear into darkness above. Everything was built on a scale that seemed designed for giants, not normal-sized people. "Why are your hallways so big?" asked Kextall, the Chitauri science officer who had come along on the diplomatic mission. "Efficiency," Dr. Chen replied. "We move a lot of people and cargo through these corridors. It's better to build them large from the beginning than to have traffic jams later." They passed through what Dr. Chen called a residential section. Through large windows, Zix Thera could see apartment buildings that looked exactly like the ones on any planet. People were walking on sidewalks. Children were playing in parks, and there were even trees and grass. "You have a forest on your ship?" Zixthera said, not quite believing what she was seeing. "Several forests," Dr. Chen corrected, "and lakes, farms, schools, hospitals, factories. Everything a city needs. We don't just travel between stars, Commander. We bring our civilization with us." They stopped at a viewing platform that looked out into a vast open space inside the ship. Zixthera stared in amazement at what looked like a complete city floating in space. Buildings rose up from the floor of the ship, connected by bridges and walkways. People moved around on moving sidewalks and small vehicles. "This is Central Plaza," Dr. Chen explained. "The heart of our city. About 15,000 people live and work in this section alone." "How is this possible?" whispered Kextel. "The structural engineering alone should be impossible. The weight, the power requirements, the life support systems." Dr. Chen led them to an observation deck where they could see the technical specifications displayed on large screens. Kexidal's forearms moved frantically as he tried to take notes on everything he was seeing. "Our fusion reactors produce enough power to supply a small planet," Dr. Chen explained. "We have our own manufacturing facilities, so we can build whatever we need. Our recycling systems are so efficient that we waste almost nothing." "But the cost," Zixthera said. "Building something like this must take the resources of an entire star system." "It does," Dr. Chen agreed. "That's why we only build them for long-term missions. This ship took 5 years to construct and involved the work of millions of people. But once it's built, it can operate independently for decades." They visited the ship's farms where food was grown in massive greenhouse sections. They saw the manufacturing areas, where robots and humans worked together to build everything from clothing to computer systems. They toured the schools where human children learned alongside holographic teachers. "You're not just explorers," Zixthera realized. "You're colonists. But instead of looking for planets to live on, you've built your own planets." "Exactly," Dr. Chen said. "We learned long ago that planets don't always have what we need. They might be too hot or too cold, have the wrong atmosphere, or be too far from resources. So we decided to bring everything we need with us." In the ship's command center, Zixthera met Captain Rodriguez, a gruff older human with gray hair and tired eyes. The command center was as large as the bridge of 10 coalition ships combined, with hundreds of control stations. "Welcome aboard," Captain Rodriguez said. "Sarah's been showing you around, I hear. What do you think of our little ship?" "Little ship?" Zixthera almost laughed. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen. How do you manage to coordinate so many people and systems?" "Practice," Rodriguez said with a smile. "And really good computers. We've been building ships like this for about 50 years now. This one's actually 3rd generation, much more efficient than the early models." "There are more ships like this?" Kextal asked. "Oh yes," Dr. Chen said. "The Leviathan is just one of 50 city ships in our current fleet. Each one is designed for different missions. Some are focused on scientific research, others on colonization, others on manufacturing. 50 ships like this." Zixthera felt dizzy at the thought. The Coalition's entire fleet consisted of maybe 2,000 ships, most of them much smaller than even the humans' escort vessels. "How long have your people been traveling in space?" she asked. "About 200 years since we achieved faster-than-light travel," Dr. Chen replied. "We started small like everyone else, but we learned quickly that small ships mean small thinking. If you want to really explore the galaxy, you need to bring your whole civilization with you." As the tour continued, Zixthera began to understand the human philosophy. They did not see space as an empty void to be crossed as quickly as possible. They saw it as a place to live, to build, to grow. Their ships were not just transportation. They were homes, complete with everything needed for human civilization to thrive. "Your people must be very brave," Zixthera said as they returned to the hangar bay, "to commit so many resources to ships like this." "Or very stubborn," Dr. Chen said with a laugh. "Humans don't like to be told something is impossible. When our engineers said we couldn't build ships this big, we took it as a challenge." As Zixthera prepared to return to her own ship, she realized that everything the Coalition thought they knew about space travel was wrong. They had been thinking small, building small, dreaming small. The humans had shown them that there was another way. The universe was about to get much more interesting. Historian Veltana of the Aquari had spent her life studying the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. She had written books about the great empires, the failed colonies, and the species that had tried to build too much too fast. But as she sat in the grand plaza of the human ship Leviathan, everything she thought she knew about civilization seemed wrong. The grand plaza was a massive open space inside the ship, with a glass dome overhead that showed the stars outside. Trees grew in carefully planned gardens, and a small river flowed through the center of the space. Humans walked along paths, sat on benches, and children played in playgrounds. It looked exactly like the central square of any major city, except this city was flying through space. "It's beautiful," Veltana said to Dr. Chen, who was sitting across from her at a small cafe. "But I don't understand how your people afford to build something like this." Dr. Chen sipped her coffee and smiled. "That's a question we get from every species we meet. Everyone thinks we're crazy for building ships this big. But let me ask you something. How do your people colonize new worlds?" "The standard way," Veltana replied. "We send small, efficient ships with basic supplies. The colonists build what they need using local resources. It takes time, but it works." "And how many colonies fail?" Dr. Chen asked. Veltana paused. It was not a comfortable question. "About half," she admitted. "Sometimes the local resources aren't what we expected. Sometimes the colonists can't adapt to the new environment. Sometimes they just give up." "Exactly," Dr. Chen said. "You're asking people to leave everything they know and start over with almost nothing. That's incredibly difficult. But what if they didn't have to give up anything?" She gestured around the plaza where families were enjoying an afternoon together. "Everyone on this ship lives the same life they would live on Earth. Same food, same entertainment, same comfortable homes. When we reach our destination, we don't have to build a civilization from scratch. We already have one." Veltana began to see the logic, but it still seemed excessive. "But the cost is less than you think," interrupted a new voice. Veltana turned to see a tall human man approaching their table. Dr. Chen introduced him as Captain Rodriguez. "Mind if I join you?" Rodriguez asked, pulling up a chair. "I heard you asking about costs. It's something I think about a lot." He leaned back in his chair and pointed up at the dome above them. "See, most species think about ships as transportation. You build the smallest ship that can get you from point A to point B. But we think about ships as investments." "Investments?" Veltana asked. "This ship took 5 years and enormous resources to build," Rodriguez explained. "But once it's finished, it can operate for 50 years or more. And during those 50 years, it's not just consuming resources, it's producing them." Dr. Chen nodded. "We manufacture everything we need right here on the ship. Our factories produce goods that we trade with other worlds. Our research labs develop new technologies. Our farms produce more food than we can eat. You're making money while you travel," Veltana realized. "Exactly," Rodriguez said. "By the time this ship completes its mission, it will have paid for itself several times over. And will have established a permanent human presence in this part of the galaxy." A group of human children ran past their table, chasing each other and laughing. Veltana watched them and felt a strange sadness. She remembered the Aquari colony ships, cramped and uncomfortable, where children spent years dreaming of the day they could see open sky again. "Your children grow up happy," she observed. "That's the point," Dr. Chen said. "When you're asking people to spend decades traveling between stars, you need to make sure they can live full lives during the journey. Marriage, children, careers, education, entertainment, all of it has to be possible." Rodriguez stood up and walked to the railing that overlooked the plaza. "Come here," he said. "I want to show you something." Veltana joined him at the railing. Below them, the plaza was full of activity. People were shopping, eating, meeting friends, playing sports. It looked like any busy city center. "See that couple over there?" Rodriguez pointed to a young man and woman sitting by the river. "They met on this ship 3 years ago. Got married in the chapel on deck 15. Now they're expecting their first child." He pointed to another area where older humans were playing a game with small balls. "Those people are retired. They spent their careers working in various parts of the ship. Now they spend their time teaching young people, creating art, or just enjoying life. And those kids," he pointed to a playground where dozens of children were playing together. "They were born on this ship. To them, this isn't a spaceship. This is home. This is the world they know." Veltana felt tears in her eyes. In all her studies of galactic civilizations, she had never seen anything like this. Most space travel was about endurance, about surviving the journey to reach a destination. But the humans had created something different. They had created a way to live while traveling. "How did your people develop this philosophy?" she asked. Dr. Chen rejoined them at the railing. Trial and error, mostly. Our early colony ships were small like everyone else's, and like everyone else, we had a lot of failures. People would spend years traveling to a new world only to find it wasn't suitable, or they'd arrive and not have the resources they needed to build a proper colony. So we started thinking bigger, Rodriguez added. Instead of sending people to worlds we hoped would work, we decided to bring the world with us. If a planet isn't suitable, we just keep traveling until we find one that is, and in the meantime we're still living full lives. A gentle chime sounded throughout the plaza, and Veltana saw people beginning to gather in small groups. "What's happening?" she asked. "Evening community meetings," Dr. Chen explained. "Different neighborhoods get together to discuss local issues, plan events, share news. It's part of how we maintain social connections in a community this large." Veltana watched as humans of all ages formed circles and began talking animatedly. She could see friendship, disagreement, laughter, and serious discussion. It was exactly what happened in any healthy community. "You haven't just built a big ship," she said, finally understanding. "You've built a society that can exist anywhere." "Now you're getting it," Rodriguez said with a smile. "That's why size matters. You can't have a real society with 100 people crammed into a small ship. You need thousands of people, space to live and work and play, and resources to support it all." As they walked back through the ship toward the diplomatic quarters, Veltana saw everything differently. The wide corridors weren't wasteful. They were necessary for a community this size. The parks and recreational areas weren't luxuries. They were essential for mental health during long journeys. The factories and schools weren't extras. They were what made the ship a complete civilization rather than just transportation. "Other species are going to want to learn from you," she told Dr. Chen as they reached her guest quarters. "We hope so," Dr. Chen replied. "We'd love to share what we've learned, but it requires a different way of thinking about space travel and colonization." "What do you mean?" Dr. Chen paused at the door to Veltana's room. "Most species see space as empty void between the places they want to go. We see space as where we live. This ship isn't taking us to our destination. This ship is our destination." That night, as Veltana lay in her comfortable bed in quarters larger than most Coalition ship cabins, she thought about everything she had seen. The humans had not just solved the technical problems of building massive ships. They had solved the social and psychological problems of long-term space travel. They had proven that it was possible to bring an entire civilization to the stars. And once other species realized what was possible, nothing would ever be the same again. Security Chief Gralvax of the Coalition fleet paced nervously in his quarters aboard the Stellar Wind. The massive human ships had been sitting peacefully in space for 3 days now, but he could not shake the feeling of danger. His red scales, which normally lay flat against his skin, were raised in an unconscious display of alarm. The Draknari had evolved from predators, and every instinct in Gralvax's body was telling him that the human fleet represented a threat unlike anything the Coalition had ever faced. He had fought pirates, hostile aliens, and rogue AI systems, but those enemies had been normal-sized, using weapons and tactics he understood. "These humans were different, sir." His aide, a young Chitauri officer, entered the room with a datapad. "You requested the tactical analysis of the human vessels." Gralvax took the pad and read through the report. The numbers made his blood run cold. The human escort ships, which they called destroyers, were larger than Coalition battleships. Their main vessels, the city ships, were so massive that they barely registered on scales designed for normal spacecraft. "Have you calculated their possible weapons capacity?" he asked. "We tried, sir," the aide replied nervously. "Based on their size and power output, they could mount weapon systems larger than our entire fleet combined. But our sensors don't detect any obvious weapon signatures." That was what worried Gralvax the most. The humans claimed to be peaceful, but ships this large could hide enormous weapon systems, and if they were lying about their intentions, the Coalition would have no way to defend itself. He made a decision. "Request a meeting with the human leadership. I want to see their defensive capabilities for myself." 2 hours later, Gralvax found himself in a conference room aboard the Leviathan that was larger than his ship's entire command deck. Across from him sat Dr. Sarah Chen and Captain Rodriguez, along with several other human officers. They all looked calm and friendly, which somehow made him more nervous. "Security Chief Gralvax," Dr. Chen said with a smile. "Thank you for joining us. Captain Rodriguez tells me you have some questions about our ship's defensive systems." "I do." Gralvax said, trying to keep his voice steady. Your vessels are unprecedented in size. The Coalition Security Council is concerned about the possible military applications. Captain Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. I understand your concerns. In your position, I'd probably be worried too. Would it help if we showed you our defensive systems? You would do that? Gralvax asked, surprised. Of course, Dr. Chen said. We have nothing to hide. Captain Rodriguez, could you arrange a demonstration? 20 minutes later, Gralvax stood on an observation deck watching the Leviathan's defensive systems activate. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. Panels along the ship's hull slid open, revealing thousands of point defense weapons. Each weapon was larger than the main guns on Coalition warships. Energy shields flickered to life around the massive vessel, creating a barrier that glowed softly in the darkness of space. Our point defense grid can target and destroy incoming missiles, fighters, or debris, Captain Rodriguez explained casually. We need that capability because when you're this big, you're an easy target for smaller, faster attackers. How many weapon systems do you have? Gralvax asked, his voice barely a whisper. About 10,000 point defense turrets on this ship alone, Rodriguez replied, plus the main shield generators, electronic warfare systems, and armor plating. 10,000 weapons. Gralvax's entire battle group had maybe 50 weapon systems total. The humans had more firepower on one ship than the Coalition had in its entire fleet. And this is a civilian vessel? He managed to ask. Dr. Chen and Captain Rodriguez exchanged glances. Yes, Dr. Chen said slowly. This is an exploration and colonization ship. We're not military personnel. Then what do your military ships look like? The silence that followed was more terrifying than any weapon. Finally, Captain Rodriguez spoke. Our military operates on a different scale entirely, he said quietly. The ships you see here are civilian vessels. We build them for exploration, colonization, and trade. Our military ships are larger. Larger? Gralvax felt his legs go weak. How could anything be larger than these massive city ships? Dr. Chen seemed to notice his distress. Security Chief, I want to be very clear about something. Humanity has no hostile intentions toward the Coalition or any other species. We came here to establish friendly relations and trade partnerships. But you could destroy our entire civilization if you wanted to, Gralvax said. Probably, Captain Rodriguez admitted. But we don't want to. Conquest isn't profitable, and we're a very practical people. It's much better to have you as friends and trading partners than as enemies or subjects. Dr. Chen stood up and walked to the window looking out at the stars. Let me tell you something about humanity, Security Chief. We've been building things our entire history. Cities, nations, civilizations. We've learned that it's always better to build together than to tear each other down. But surely your people understand that other species might feel threatened by your ships, Gralvax said. Of course we do, Rodriguez replied. That's why we're being so open with you. We want you to understand that these ships aren't weapons pointed at your worlds. They're homes where our people live and work. To demonstrate this point, they took Gralvax on another tour of the ship. But this time, instead of showing him the impressive engineering and comfortable living spaces, they showed him the more mundane reality of life aboard a city ship. They visited the daycare centers where human children played while their parents worked. They saw the hospitals where doctors treated everything from broken bones to space sickness. They watched teenagers attending classes, learning mathematics and literature and art. You see, Dr. Chen explained as they watched a group of elderly humans playing cards in a recreation room. This isn't a warship pretending to be a city. It's a city that happens to be able to defend itself. In the manufacturing sectors, Gralvax saw the true purpose of the ship's enormous size. Vast factories produced everything the human community needed. Food, clothing, electronics, furniture, even artwork and entertainment. The ship was completely self-sufficient. We build big because we need big, Captain Rodriguez said as they watched robots assembling computer systems. When you're supporting 200,000 people, you need industrial capacity to match. And if another species attacked you? Gralvax asked. We'd defend ourselves, Rodriguez said simply. But we'd much rather avoid that situation entirely. That's why we're talking to you instead of just claiming territory and setting up colonies. As the tour continued, Gralvax began to understand the human perspective. They had not built these massive ships to intimidate or conquer. They had built them because their approach to colonization required enormous resources and infrastructure. But the effect was the same. Whether they intended it or not, the humans had created a fleet that could dominate any other species in the galaxy. The question was what they would do with that power. "What happens now?" he asked as they returned to the conference room. Dr. Chen smiled. "Now we talk. We establish trade relationships, exchange technology, and learn from each other. We share what we've learned about large-scale space habitation, and you teach us about your worlds and cultures. And if the Coalition decides you're too dangerous to have as neighbors?" The room fell silent again. Finally, Captain Rodriguez spoke. "That would be unfortunate," he said quietly, "but it would also be a mistake. We didn't come here to fight, Security Chief. We came here to build something better." As Gralvax returned to his own ship, his mind was spinning with implications. The humans were telling the truth about their peaceful intentions. But they had also demonstrated power that could reshape the entire galaxy. The Coalition faced a choice. They could treat the humans as enemies and try to contain or destroy them. But that would almost certainly lead to their own destruction. Or they could accept the humans as allies and try to learn from them. Looking back at the massive human ships floating peacefully in space, Gralvax realized that the galaxy had just entered a new age. The age of giants had begun, and everyone else would have to adapt or be left behind. The emergency alarm on the Coalition monitoring station screamed through the silence of space. Commander Zixthera rushed to the main display where a terrifying sight was unfolding. A massive asteroid storm, bigger than anything in recorded history, was heading directly toward the Coalition colony world of Cathera Prime. "How long until impact?" she demanded. 18 hours, replied her science officer Kextel. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "Commander, there are over 3,000 asteroids in the storm. Some of them are the size of city blocks. The impact will destroy the entire colony." Zixthera felt her heart sinking. Cathera Prime was home to 12 million Coalition citizens. The planetary defense systems could handle small meteor showers, but nothing like this. Evacuating 12 million people in 18 hours was impossible. "Send a priority distress signal to all Coalition fleets," she ordered. "Request immediate assistance." "Already done," reported the communications officer. "The nearest Coalition fleet is 4 days away. Even our fastest ships won't arrive in time." The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of the sensors tracking the approaching asteroids. 12 million people were about to die, and there was nothing the Coalition could do to save them. "Commander," the communications officer called out suddenly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Dr. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Zixthera could see the bustling activity of the Leviathan's command center. "Commander Zixthera," Dr. Chen said without preamble, "we've detected the asteroid storm heading for your colony world." "We can help." "Dr. Chen," Zixthera replied, hope flickering in her voice, "your assistance would be greatly appreciated. But I must warn you, this is an extremely dangerous situation. We're talking about thousands of large asteroids moving at incredible speed." "We understand," Captain Rodriguez said, appearing next to Dr. Chen on the screen. "We're already moving our ships into position. Estimated time to intercept, 14 hours. "Intercept?" Zixthera asked. "Captain, I don't think you understand the size of this storm. It would take hundreds of ships to deflect or destroy that many asteroids." Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Commander, I think you don't understand the size of our ships." Over the next several hours, Zixthera watched in amazement as the human fleet moved with coordinated precision. The massive city ships, which had seemed slow and cumbersome, accelerated to speeds that defied their enormous size. Their escort vessels spread out in formation, each one positioning itself along the path of the asteroid storm. "How are they moving so fast?" Kexadal asked, staring at his instruments. "Ships that size should take hours to change course. Their engines are proportional to their size," Dr. Chen explained over the communication link. "When you build everything on a massive scale, you get massive performance." As the human fleet approached the asteroid storm, Zixthera saw something that she would remember for the rest of her life. The Leviathan and its sister ships positioned themselves directly in the path of the largest asteroids, using their enormous bulk as shields. "What are they doing?" whispered the weapons officer. "Those asteroids will tear their ships apart." But as the first wave of asteroids struck the human vessels, nothing happened. The massive rocks, some as large as buildings, simply bounced off the ship's hulls like pebbles hitting a mountain. Energy shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. But the ships themselves remained undamaged. Our hulls are designed for long-term deep space travel, Captain Rodriguez explained calmly, as asteroids continued to strike his ship. We've run into plenty of debris fields over the years. A little rock storm doesn't worry us much. Meanwhile, the human escort ships were dealing with the smaller asteroids in a display of firepower that left the Coalition observers speechless. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, turning dangerous space rocks into harmless dust. The precision was incredible. Every shot hit its target, and within minutes, hundreds of asteroids had been completely destroyed. How many ships do you have out there? Sixthera asked, trying to count the weapon signatures on her sensors. All of them, Dr. Chen replied. 52 major vessels plus about 300 smaller ships. This seemed like a good time for a fleet exercise. For the Coalition, this would have been the naval battle of the century, requiring every available ship and thousands of personnel. For the humans, it was a training exercise. As the asteroid storm continued, Sixthera watched human mining ships, vessels she had not even known were present, move into action. These ships were designed for breaking apart asteroids to extract valuable minerals, and they went to work with casual efficiency. Those mining vessels, she said to Dr. Chen, they're larger than our battleships. Industrial ships tend to be big, Dr. Chen agreed. When you're mining an asteroid field, you need the capacity to process a lot of material quickly. The mining ships extended massive mechanical arms that grabbed asteroids and fed them into processing chambers. Within minutes, dangerous space rocks became useful raw materials that were stored in the ship's cargo holds. You're not just stopping the asteroid storm, Kextel observed with wonder. You're harvesting it, Captain Rodriguez chuckled. No sense in wasting good resources. Those asteroids contain enough rare metals to supply several star systems. By the time the last asteroid was either destroyed or captured, the human fleet had turned a natural disaster into a profitable mining operation. The colony world of Cathera Prime was safe, and the humans had acquired enough raw materials to build several new ships. Commander, Dr. Chen said as the all-clear signal was broadcast to the colony world, we're transmitting the processed materials to your people as a gift. Consider it a gesture of friendship between our civilizations. Zix. Thara stared at the sensor readings showing cargo ships full of refined metals heading toward Cathera Prime. The materials were worth more than the entire colony's annual economic output. Dr. Chen, she said, her voice thick with emotion, you have saved 12 million lives today. The Coalition will not forget this. We hope not, Dr. Chen replied with a smile, because we'd like to propose a joint project. The joint project, as it turned out, was something that would change the Coalition forever. The humans offered to share their shipbuilding technology and help the Coalition construct their own city ships. We can't just give you the plans, Captain Rodriguez explained during a meeting aboard the Leviathan 2 days later. Ships this size require a completely different approach to engineering, resource management, and social organization. But we can teach you. Teach us? Asked Coalition Fleet Admiral Kicksnor, who had arrived to personally thank the humans for their assistance. A joint construction project, Dr. Chen said. We'll work together to build the first Coalition city ship. Your people will learn our techniques and will learn about your needs and preferences. Admiral Kicksnor looked skeptical. Such a project would take years and cost enormous resources. About 5 years, Rodriguez agreed. And yes, it will be expensive, but less expensive than you might think, especially if we pool our resources. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing ship designs. We've been analyzing Coalition technology and social structures. Your people prefer smaller, more intimate communities than humans do, so instead of one massive city ship, we could build a ship designed for your cultural needs. The hologram showed a vessel that was large by Coalition standards, but smaller than the human city ships. It was designed with multiple separate sections connected by transit tubes, allowing for the smaller community groups that Coalition species preferred. It would house about 50,000 people, Dr. Chen explained, large enough to be self-sufficient, but organized in a way that feels familiar to your people. Over the following months, the joint construction project became the most ambitious engineering undertaking in Coalition history. Human engineers worked alongside Coalition scientists, sharing knowledge and solving problems together. Sixthera, who had been promoted to oversee the project, found herself spending most of her time aboard the Leviathan, learning human construction techniques. She watched as enormous manufacturing systems built components that were then assembled in space, by teams of human and coalition workers. Your people learn quickly, Captain Rodriguez commented as they watched Chitauri engineers operating human construction equipment. We've had good teachers, Zixthara replied, though I admit thinking on this scale is still difficult for us. You'll get used to it, Rodriguez assured her. Once you see what's possible, you can't go back to thinking small. The construction project took exactly 5 years, just as the humans had predicted. When the Coalition's first city ship, named Unity in honor of the cooperation between species, was finally completed, it represented more than just advanced technology. It represented a new way of thinking about space exploration and colonization. At the dedication ceremony, held in Unity's main plaza, representatives from dozens of Coalition worlds gathered to celebrate. The ship buzzed with activity as Coalition families moved into their new homes among the stars.